what happened today is ICE agents deciding that we were no longer allowed to fulfill our constitutional duties.
Republicans have repeatedly stated that you committed immigration fraud. Are you at all worried about a formal investigation that could perhaps lead to your deportation?
Well, you're one of those people.
I don't know what that means, but are you at all concerned?
Do I look concerned?
I guess not.
Okay.
All right. What about the Minnesota fraud hearing? You didn't show up for that. Do you think you should have?
Why should I have?
Well, it happened in your state. Don't you want to defend your position?
There were people from my state that were there.
Okay, but why not you? I mean, there's allegations that you're complicit in the fraud. Wouldn't you want to show up?
Why would there be an allegation that I'm complicit? How would I be complicit?
Well, what about Tim Walz?
Do you just ask stupid questions? Is this your thing?
Ilhan Omar, thanks for joining me. The Somali daycare fraud has cost the taxpayers $17 billion. Do you take any responsibility for that?
Well, I want to say, this also has an impact on Somalis because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota.
Nick Shirley, who uncovered the fraud with just a camera, says that these Somalis need to be deported. What do you have to say to that?
It's disgusting. These are Americans, and we feel like there is an unhealthy obsession that he has on the Somali community.
I mean, this place misspelt Learning Center as Leering Center. Wasn't it obvious that there was fraud here?
This wasn't something that people were not looking at. There was always those alarms.
It's reported you have a net worth of $30 million. Do you own any of these daycares yourself?
Yes, of course, about 5 of them.
We just received a statement from DHS about cases like yours where you were barred from visiting an ICE facility. They said, in part, a previous court order stated that funding appropriated to DHS by Congress cannot be used to prevent members of Congress from entering facilities. However, the court also ruled that funding derived from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is exempt from this limitation. They further go on to say that this is to ensure adequate protection for members of Congress, congressional staff detainees, and ICE employees alike. Unannounced visits require pulling ICE officers from their normal duties. And they go on. Do you think you would have been unsafe if you had continued your tour of this facility, as this statement seems to suggest that you would have been inadequately protected if they had not been because they had not been given sufficient time to prepare for your visit?
Absolutely not. That is the most BS statement I have ever heard from DHS. And there are a lot of BS statements from DHS I've heard over the tenure of the Trump administration. When we were let into the building, it was no different than when I visited back in January to have a meeting with DHS officials. There was no need to have anyone guarding us. There was no need to have anyone with weapons with us. It was a casual visit inside the building, and we could have been allowed to fully complete our oversight duties. Like I said, it was very fascinating to us that in the middle of that visit, that they did get that phone call, that we were immediately told that we had to go upstairs, and that the explanation on why our tour was abruptly ending would come after we went upstairs. So if it had to do with any sort of security problems, we would have been rushed with some armed guards or any of those kind of things that you normally see. But no, we quietly walked, and we were asked if we wanted coffee. So this had nothing to do with safety or worry for ICE agents or for ourselves. I'm so exhausted in trying to ask what any of this information has led to you finding any criminals that you have indicted, that explains why you are wasting so much of our taxpayer resources and also terrorizing our communities in the amount of federal law enforcement agents that you have in the streets of our city and our state. There needs to be some sort of justification
that in the community.
It's just creating fear. What they are doing is creating confusion, chaos, trying to intimidate people from being able to exercise their regular, normal activities that they would There is no justification in any of the things that they say. The 87 people that you've described as being investigated, many of them adjudicated, all happened under the Biden administration. There is no justification for this search. We know that ICE has the ability to conduct raids. There is no reason to have over 2,000 people coming in to our city and creating the level of terror that they have created.
Well, the administration argues that they have to do it because the state failed to, right?
The federal government and the state have been working peacefully together and have brought justice to these 87 people that you've described. None of this search that they have conducted has produced any sort of criminal activity. They haven't been able to charge anyone as of yet.
Ilhan Omar is big mad. She's not talking with all that arrogance today. The largest welfare fraud scandal in all of America's history has happened in her district, Minnesota. So during that Democratic shutdown, the Republicans were working. Allegedly, the Somali community funneled fraudulent autism claims back to Somalia that goes into the accounts of Al-Shabaab, an Al-Qaeda terrorist group. So President Trump terminates the temporary migrant status for all Somalians. So let's talk about it. Allegedly, the Somalians found a way to exploit the HSS program of Minnesota. These funds were designated to autism, addicts, seniors, and those that needed help with housing. Word on the street, this program was ran loosely. Somali children are overly diagnosed with autism. They are enrolled in expensive social services programs. And then these inflated autism claims are submitted to Medicaid. I would say this is unbelievable, but this is happening in California as well. Within 4 years, the HSS program of Minnesota has increased from $3 million to $400 million.
A massive federal investigation has been underway into widespread fraud schemes in Minnesota, particularly involving welfare and pandemic-era aid programs. And so prosecutors have described a series of multi-million-dollar scams, including nonprofits that allegedly stole funds earmarked for child nutrition programs, and charges have been filed against dozens of people, most of whom are Somali Americans, a community that Ilhan Omar represents in Congress. Now, Omar hasn't just offered a simple statement, family. She's fired back. On national platforms, she blasted that the idea that there is any connection between this alleged fraud and terrorism, saying that if such a linkage existed, then it would be a failure of law enforcement for not uncovering it sooner. And she's also called the federal response confusion and chaos, pushing back on what she says as heavy-handed tactics that unfairly target immigrants and even communities of color. And so here's where it gets even more complicated, family. This investigation has turned into more than just fraud allegations. Political figures from across the spectrum have jumped into the debate, and critics of Omar have seized on the controversy to question her leadership and even her ties to people involved in the cases. Now, there is no verified evidence tying her directly to committing any crimes herself, still allegations, some even claiming that money could have been misused, though authorities haven't publicly confirmed that. So Omar's response has two main pillars, family. First, she insists that Somali community should not be painted with a broad brush simply because some individuals are accused of wrongdoing. And second, she points out that her criticism of how investigators are handling the situation stems from a genuine concern about fairness and even racial profiling. And these claims have energized her supporters and even fueled a broader conversation about how law enforcement approaches fraud and immigration enforcement. But of course, not everyone sees it that way. Some commentators argue Omar has not done enough to address why fraud became so widespread in Minnesota in the first place, and that her answers in media interviews, especially when when pressed on how these fraud schemes got so out of control, have been vague or even defensive. And here's something else that's been gas on the fire, family. National political figures have weighed in with harsh rhetoric. Some have used the issue to attack both Somali immigrants and even Omar personally, describing them in demeaning terms and even demanding aggressive action. And so that rhetoric has only intensified the spotlight on this controversy, making it not just a local Minnesota issue, but a flashpoint in the national discussion about immigration, about accountability, and even race in America. And so why does this matter, family? Because what started as a federal investigation into fraud allegations has morphed into a cultural and even political battleground. And so it's about accountability, yes, but also about identity, about representation, and even about power. And for many of Omar's supporters, family, her defense is seen as a stand against xenophobia and even an equal treatment by law enforcement. And for our critics, her reactions are viewed as evasive or even dismissive of serious concerns about accountability and oversight. And now the tension doesn't appear to be cooling off, as even authorities and lawmakers keep pushing for answers, and even as Omar continues to defend her position and even her community, this story will almost certainly keep dominating headlines and even sparking debate across social media, even the news outlets and even political arenas. And so, family, make sure you stay informed, stay curious, and even stay critical about what you hear and what you see. I'll be right here breaking it all down with you. Thanks for watching, and make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss the next update.